For your next portion in math for writing equations using variables, and remember variables were using letters in numbers in our equations, we're going to want to know the definition of these words over here. Okay, so if in a sentence you see the words is or the same as, that should take the place of the equal sign. And we'll see an example of this in a moment. Sum means that we're going to use addition. Difference means we're going to use subtraction. Product is the answer of a multiplication equation, and quotient is the answer of a division equation. So we could see the division sign like that, we could see the division sign like that, or sometimes we even do a line, kind of like the fractions. Okay, so let's practice what this means here. Oh, I want to go to this other one. So here's some examples of sentences that we would want you to write in math form. So these are in sentence form, and we would want you to write the equation. So let's look at this first one. It says, the sum of n and 5 is 15. Well, let's take a look at some of those important words. We have sum, we have is, and then we've got n, 5, and 15. Well, is takes the place of the equal sign, so we would write the equal sign right above that. The 15 can stay where it is. And then sum is where we're going to put in this place for and. So n and 5. So this equation would be n plus 5 equals 15. We would say that as the sum of n and 5 is 15. So identifying some of those important words is going to be really helpful. Let's look over at this one. The difference between y and 6 is 2. So there's our important word. Is means equals. Difference means subtract. And then we've got y, 6, and 2. Well, we have the equals and the 2 because the 2 is the only thing after the is there. And then we've got y, 6, and the word difference means subtract. Y minus 6 is 2, or we could also say that as the difference between y and 6 is 2. Down here, it says the product of x and 7 is 49. So product I know means multiplication. I have an x, a 7, there's the is, the equal sign, and the number 49. Now, here's the one thing that might look a little bit different. Because we often use x as a variable, and x and the multiplication sign look super similar because they're the same letter, you might see it written like this, 7x equals 49. Whenever you see a number and a letter right next to each other, that means multiply the two. It's kind of like saying 7 times x equals 49, but that might get really confusing by having two x's next to each other. So instead, they just kind of take that x away. Sometimes it's even used with a dot. You might see 7 times x equals 49. They use a dot to make it a multiplication sign. So a number and a letter right next to each other means to multiply the two of them. And then we've got the is or equals 49. Last example here on this page, 24 is the same as the quotient of 6 and s. This time we have is in the beginning, and that's totally okay. 24 is, so we can start off with 24 equals the quotient of s and 6. So we could write this two ways. Quotient means divide, so we could say s divided by 6. Probably the more common thing that you will see is they would write 24 equals s divided by 6, and they'll use kind of that fraction line. But if you remember back in the fraction unit, that line is the same as divide. Okay, so s divided by 6 is 24. Now we could go through and solve every single one of these equations like you learned how to do last week, So what plus 5 is 15? You could probably solve this in your head, but we want to get n all by itself. And so we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, and we get n equals 10. This one, we want to get y all by itself, so we're going to add 6 to get rid of it. Add 6 to this side, so y equals 8. This one, 7 times x is 49, so the opposite of multiplication is division. So 7 divided by 7, we'll get rid of the 7's, not the x, and we're going to divide this side by 7. We get x equals 7 because 7 times 7 equals 49. And then over here we have the division symbol. The opposite of divide is multiply. Let me move this one out of the way here. So instead of divide by 6, we're going to do times 6 on both sides. And we go 24 times 6. 6 times 4 is 24. 12, 13, 14. So S would equal 144. And I know that this would work because if I actually went and I did 144 divided by 6, which is what that would be, putting 144 in here, I would end up with 24, which is the answer. All right, let's go and do a few more examples before you go and do this on your own. Here's a couple different ways that they also write problems, all right? So number one, it says 156 increased by j. So actually, we're going to start with 156, and we're going to add j to it. Now, just because they start with the number doesn't mean that the number comes first. In this case, it does. But in a second here, you'll see another example, okay? Number two, x minus 14. That one makes sense. X, take away 14. We're not solving any of these because we don't have any equal sign. We don't have any of them saying is. We're just writing the first part of the equation. Number three, take away 7 from D. So now this is an example of, even though they wrote the 7 first, we're not going to write the 7 first to begin with. We're taking 7 away from the letter. So we're going to have to use D first and take 7 away. This is kind of a tricky one, so make sure you're reading the sentence carefully. Number 4, 9 divided by y. You could write it like this, 9 divided by y, or 9 divided by y. And number 5 is 8 times g. 8 times g. So in today's assignment, you're going to be doing some things sort of like this. You're not having to really solve for anything today. And we're going to be starting to use IXL Math tomorrow. And there's going to be a little intro video of how you're going to get logged on and find your assignments on IXL Math. Let me know if you have any questions on today's assignment. It can be a little tricky, but I know that you can get it.